Wait. You're taking a 5,000 square foot lot and building 14 to 20 units on it.
Around 5,000 square foot lot, single family home. We tear it down and build 14 to 20 units on top. I moved to the U.S. in 2019 for school. While I'm going to school, while I'm going through the whole housing situation and a messy breakup, I do a lot of research to start what ended up being my startup called HUGS, which is Housing Undergraduate and Graduate Students.
You've proven that the American dream is alive for anybody. Compare an MBA to a mentorship.
Yeah.
What would you pick?
If you're comparing them, no way, no contest.
How important was it for you to have your MBA, and do you actually feel like that's benefited you since you got it?
In life, there's a blueprint for everything. There's no need to start over. Hear from industry leaders, those at the top of their fitness journey, and real estate gurus. They tell you exactly how they did it. All you have to do is listen, learn, and execute. This is The Blueprint with Brad Rice.
All right, guys, we're back on The Blueprint, and I am super thrilled to have with me today my guest, Carl DeMelle. And believe me, you would not get that pronunciation out of the spelling. So if you did, you're good. Carl is an immigrant from Haiti, and he faced really significant challenges securing housing when he got here in the U.S. So this was like navigating a complex world of rental agreements, cultural differences, and such. Well, anyway, this challenge fueled Carl, and he wound up creating a short-term rental business with over $40 million of assets under management today. And also, very significantly, an undergraduate housing company that helps people to find housing when they're going through school. So we'll talk a bit about that. But this is all in a few short years and over COVID. So like really big accomplishments. So Carl, look, you've proven that the American dream is alive for anybody, seriously. So I want to talk about your transition here, you know, what the obstacles were and how you made that happen. So I'd love to start with just, you know, how you got to the United States.
Thanks for the intro, and thanks for highlighting the challenges that didn't just fuel me then, but still fuel me today. All right, so I moved to the U.S. in 2019 for school. That's half the story because my girlfriend at the time lived here, so I was trying to get here, and school was kind of my excuse. But it was like I signed up for an MBA at the University of San Diego, so I moved there, and I always wanted to sort of get to that higher education level. I'm the first in my family to get to a master's level degree.
Okay.
Yeah. So my parents did undergrad, but not master's, and now I'm the next level up. But really, I just wanted to be close to my girl at the time, right?
Yeah, that's a good reason.
Yeah.
A lot of motivation there.
Yeah, exactly. So I do a lot to get here, and we can get into that later. But as soon as I land in San Diego, this was in 2019, July 25th, my eyes are open, right? So I had been to the U.S. a lot, just on vacation, but now I was here for a purpose for an undetermined amount of time. So I knew from day one that I had to hit the ground running. So the next day, the first thing I do is I go to school, which wasn't even open, but there was a bank on campus, and I open a bank account. And I sign up for a credit card because I knew that if anything, I need to have credit in this country, and it would take at least 6 months to get that. Yeah. So that's my first move, which actually paid off later.
So let me ask you a question. I want to go back to that real quick for those that maybe haven't started establishing credit. Maybe they're in college.
Yeah.
How do you establish your first line of credit or credit card when you're in college?
Yeah. So the easiest non-Google type way to do it is go to the bank, show up with $200 or $300, and say, I want a secured credit card. And a secured credit card is essentially they give you credit for the same amount of cash that you give them. So they essentially take no risk. So they can give you a credit card. But the good aspect of it is it shows up on your credit report, and it can kick it off, rather than, doing the cat and mouse, chicken or the egg type of equation. It's like, I can't get credit without credit, et cetera, et cetera. Just show up with cash, give them $300, and they'll give you a credit card, and that kicks off your journey.
That is spot on.
Yeah.
I teach this all the time. The beauty about this is that after 12 months, you get your cash back and you have a real line of credit with them and a real credit card. It converts into that. Yep. And that is the absolute, if you're 18 or over, that is the number one way. And you don't necessarily have to physically walk into a bank. But the concept is you could even do it online. You just have to find the banks that offer them. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. So that was my first move. And then the following day, the girl I moved here for and we had a disagreement, and essentially we broke up. Right? So this is like 48 hours later. But I thought, okay, no big deal, bright future. I came here with a mission. I'm going to school, et cetera. I have a little bit of cash in the bank because I needed to save up for tuition and all of that. But then I needed to find housing, right? Because I wasn't going to live with her anymore, which was the original plan. Well, that was harder than I expected. Although my secured credit card was now 2 days old, I still didn't have credit, right? Because that takes, I think, 6 months to really establish and show up. Yeah. But I didn't understand the requirement of having credit or a decent credit score at the time. I thought that this is probably just from not knowing, hey, I have cash in the bank. I tell an apartment or a landlord, I want to lease this place. I have enough cash for the next 12 months. Lease me the place. Well, it turns out cash is not always king in those scenarios because there's a lot of different things that they need, like a background check. I didn't have a background check or history here, so my file came up blank. So although I had money to pay, they still didn't know who I am, right? And that's where sort of my mind starts trying to figure out why this is an issue. Because, Brad, you may not know this, but to come here as an international student, you need to qualify with the federal government to get what's called a student visa, right? Now, to get that student visa, one of the requirements is to have a year's worth of living expenses in cash upfront. So that includes tuition, insurance, food, transportation, books, et cetera, what have you.
I didn't know they verified your cash in the bank for that. That's interesting.
Yeah, they don't stamp your visa unless you have either that in the bank or a portion plus a sponsor, right? So I needed to have, at the time, like $85,000 coming from Haiti or Dominican Republic where I was living at the time, which was really, really hard to do. So in my head, if I could qualify with the federal government, which, to me as an immigrant, that's the ultimate power, nobody can tell me no when it comes to that. Well, it turns out everybody told me no. So I applied to a lot of different places, but because I didn't have any credit, I was getting rejected. Yeah. Now, that's around the same time I mentioned I was going through my master's program. This was the first semester. They have a pitch competition on campus. They say, hey, come pitch your business. This was like 100 or 200 teams to the entire campus. You can compete, et cetera. Now, I've never competed in anything like that. I just got here. But I said, well, my plans have changed. I need the money. Let me pitch something. But
what could you win? What was the money?
Oh, so it was $15,000 for first place. I think it was half for second place. Same thing up until fourth place, and then there were like runner-ups, right? So that bright light in my head. I say, okay, let me just try it. But I didn't want to try it just like the money wasn't the goal, right? I wanted to try with something that I actually cared about. And it just so happens that I was going through this housing situation at the same time. So I did a lot of research. This took me 3 months. So this was August. The competition finale is in November, right? So I had 3 months to figure it out, pitch something that would get me there. So in those 3 months, while I'm going to school, while I'm going through the whole housing situation and a messy breakup, I do a lot of research to start what ended up being my startup called HUGS, which is Housing Undergraduate and Graduate Students. At the time, it was basically I had developed a custom credit score for international students. It was basically a mathematical formula that established a parallel between what a student and an international student needs to qualify here to establish sort of a certain credit and translate that into the equivalent of a FICO score. Yeah, so I did a lot of research for that, filed for a patent later, all of that, right? So that idea, I didn't know really, but was a sexy idea, right? So I recruit one of my classmates who's from Canada who also experienced the same thing or something similar at least. But really, I recruited her because she presented well. Like she had really good stage presence. So I say, hey, this is a competition. There's money on the line. Join me. And then we end up winning it.
You won first place.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So that was really cool. That was like my first win of the year.
Wow.
Right.
Wait, so just to clarify, how long were you here going to school for when you won that competition?
Like 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
You really like dove right in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're how old?
I am 30 now.
You're 30. And
Yeah.
when was this?
This was in 2019. So I was 24 turning 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so actually, even though, let's see, you were you were going to University of San Diego?
Yep,
Is that
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
And so you had already done some schooling in Haiti, and did that transfer over, or did you just have to start over?
No,
Okay.
none of it. I mean, so there are some concepts like, accounting or whatnot that are semi-similar.
But not like credits and
No,
transfer.
no.
So you
no.
were starting over, and you dig in, and you say, I'm going to do this contest, and you won.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really big for me. It really established my brand on campus.
Yeah.
So I after I had that, I just started having momentum, and I just kept winning and participated in everything that I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And it paid off. So if anyone in school is listening right now, try to establish a brand on campus, because
My advice for someone selling their home: number 1, do it yourself and save. Number 2, use HomePie.
HomePie makes it easy to buy or sell without an agent. I can list a home in minutes and start receiving offers right away from buyers.
When we discovered that we didn't have to lose $40,000 in agent commission just to upsize to a larger home, it was an obvious choice.
List your home for free at homepie.com. Keep your piece of the pie.
the time I was looking for jobs when I graduated, my potential employers had already heard of me because they were alums from the school. So I ended up working, this is just a fast track a little bit, I ended up working at CBRE. I did an internship there and then worked full-time for a few months. And the managing director there, in my final interview, told me that she was having a celebrity moment because she had heard of me so much, and I was on all the school papers. I did some ads for them in the airport and all of that. And then like the job was mine at the end, right? So it wasn't really an interview.
So let me ask that in a way where people can really apply this to themselves.
Yeah.
How does establishing a brand on campus while you're going to college benefit you post-college?
Yeah. So a lot of the college's network will rely on the alumni, right? So when you meet someone from your school in the industry, it's always good to have something in addition to just the school as a connector, right? So yes, there's the school, then there's the programs, but you need to have done something to kind of set yourself out. Like, what was special about your experience, right? In my case, I was very vocal, so the school had sort of put me up. Like, if you Googled me, you would find me. So that was easy for background or whatever for employers. But really, even if you're having a one-on-one, it's one of those things that someone can remember you by and have an anchor, right? So I was the student housing guy.
Yeah.
Right? Anywhere I
Got
went,
it.
I was a student housing guy. So that really, really helped even just break the ice and start a conversation.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
the student housing guy.
Yeah.
So you won this contest, but now you turned it into an actual business.
Yeah, exactly. So this was end of 2019. I worked on it all through COVID, mostly at home and doing virtual competitions. And then fast-tracked to spring semester of 2021 because it's a 2-year program. I think, okay, well, I have two options. Either I do this business, go all in. I've, sort of learned a lot over the last couple of years. I've refined the pitch. I've met a lot of people. Either I go to market, find some investors and start it, or I get a job, right? Job market is really competitive, especially at the time, but especially as an international student, most people would go with the job route because it's safer. At least you have the chance to get sponsored, to stay here longer, et cetera, et cetera. I decided to just do both, right? So I got a job right out of school, but during my spring semester, I recruited 2 co-founders. So I needed someone who knew tech, who could code. I knew enough to like get by, but not enough to be an expert. And then someone else to help me with sales or operations or whatever else, right? I had a research and learned, or I guess thought, that the magic number for co-founders is 3. So I just looked for 2 more people, right? But it ended up working out really well because right out of school over that summer, the biggest issue I identified is we have no capital. We have a nice idea that'll only get you so far. We have a way we think we can solve it, but we have no capital to actually try this, right? Because people need to eat, we need the platform, etc. So I said, well, I mean, let's just look for the money, right? Well, for context, again, we're right out of COVID. I know almost nobody really, like personal connections. I can't reach out to an uncle or to my mom. Yeah, been here 2 years, and half of it, like 2/3 of it was COVID. Yeah. Right? So I decided, well, let me turn to my fans, right? I call them fans, but really people who had seen me, again, part of the brand, grow from when I got there to where I was at. And I said, if you want to support us in figuring this out, here's a crowdfunding campaign. Now, crowdfunding, we did it through WeFunder. There's a few companies that do that now, but is a way to raise money from the public. People can invest as little as $100 up to a maximum. I don't remember exactly the number these days. And WeFunder helped us set up the campaign legally, right? So most of the platforms will just charge you a portion of what you raise as their service fee. So I started a crowdfunding campaign. We did everything from scratch, all the design, all the words, like everything. Nobody did the campaign for us. And then I went out and pitched it. I didn't know what was going to happen. Again, I was just doing an internship at that time. And then we end up raising $150,000.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And I didn't have a specific goal. I just thought, hey, maybe we can figure this out with like 20 grand, you know? So
let's unwrap this a little bit because I think this idea of crowdfunding is really appealing to people. Yeah. And you're right. Every platform's a little different, but you used WeFunder. Yeah. Walk us through the actual steps of getting onto WeFunder, what you had to do, and why you were successful at it. Like, what was it about your post or pitch that you put on WeFunder that was successful? Because you don't market it. WeFunder does.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are 2 aspects to it. The technical, or I guess operational, step-by-step process is you sign up on WeFunder, but you really apply to pitch, right? You don't just upload some documents and go live because there's regulations and there's regulation crowdfunding. WeFunder really was part of making that a thing, and I think the reg that we did was Reg CF, where anybody can invest, right?
Reg CF4.
Well, I don't remember exactly.
Okay, because I know there's a Reg D. There's
different. Reg
okay.
A, Reg D.
They help guide you through what to do. Okay.
Yeah, so you meet with them, you go through an onboarding to see where do you fit, what your goal is. Us, we ended up being Reg CF, right? And they have the legal expertise to get you onboarded with that. And I don't believe they charge anything for that, which is good because a lawyer will charge you a few $1,000s to get that done. So we ended up being a Reg CF, and once you have approval from that, you need to have a few at least projected financials. You need to have like an actual business, like incorporated, to be able to sign up. You need to have a bank account, right? Like all those things are very, very tailored, but they guide you all through it, right? And so that's on one side. So once you're live, most people have, I guess, the wrong impression that WeFunder is going to market your crowdfunding campaign for you. That does not happen. So WeFunder has a platform, or any crowdfunding campaign really has a platform where they can showcase your idea. but really you're the marketing engine behind it. So people do depending on what regulation you do, like Facebook ads to promote it, social, et cetera, et cetera. It worked for us because I had built up an audience already for like the last 2 years, right, before we launched it. So a lot of people knew about me. They knew I was genuinely trying to solve this. They knew I had gone through the issue. They knew I had started helping people doing it already. So people were, I guess, more in tune with wanting to help. And I think that also that's around where more people had more cash to try things out.
Yeah.
So that wave, sort
Yeah,
of
their
helped
COVID
us too.
money.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? So that wave helped us out too. But really, you're in charge of marketing your own campaign, and they make that really, really clear, right? So we end up raising that, and then it's off to the races. The good thing was that I was able to stretch that quite a bit because I had a job, right? So I had a full-time job, didn't get paid by the company at all, just made sure we had everything we needed to get to the next step, and then I would put my own part of my paycheck in it too. Now, the good thing is we use what we raised over the summer to launch the first version of our platform, which was really, really bad. It's insane, embarrassing almost. But we developed a brand, we launched, we monetized like the first week.
Huh.
Yeah, so that was good. Essentially, it was a Airbnb type platform where a student could go and see a listing for housing, apply, and get connected to the landlord. And they would continue to pay rent through the housing, through the platform.
Oh.
And we would take a cut of that as a revenue.
So were you charging landlords to get on the platform to
No.
showcase their properties? So they get free, but the requirement was the payments be handled through that, and you take a spiff from it.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So that boded really well for us because every, housing agreement or lease that was signed was a year at least of revenue for us, right? So that model worked really, really well. So from August to the end of 2021, we generated about $90,000, which again, at that point, I didn't have anything to compare to. I was just doing my thing, but apparently that was good metrics for a new business. The following year, 2022, it got up to $500,000. And then up until 2023, which it almost tripled again.
Wow.
So yeah, that's
a lot of placements.
Yeah. So we did quite a bit. We just worked really, really hard.
What are you using on the platform? Something like Stripe?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we use Stripe for all our payments, which Stripe is a blessing, but only having one payment provider can also kill you.
Yeah.
Right. Because one time I think one of our one of the tenants on the platform had the wrong account number, whatever, payment bounced, or they made the transaction twice. Something weird happened where Stripe flagged it and then froze all our payments.
Yeah.
So then we had to pay like for that month or for the next 45 days, everything to our landlords out of pocket, just to not raise any, red flags or create any issues. But again, having some diversity there, that was a really expensive lesson to learn.
Yeah, that is. Very interesting concept. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
Curious, let's go back to building credit.
Yeah.
So did you set this up so that you would report to the bureaus?
Yeah. So that
Look
was
at that.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's your second line of credit.
Yeah.
Is your rent.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Exactly.
So just to set you up for it, most rent that you pay, and this doesn't matter if it's to a management company, to a singular landlord, apartment building, house, whatever, it doesn't report to the credit bureau. So you don't get the credit for making your payments on time. However, there are services that do enable that.
Yeah.
So with Hugs and your ability to place students in housing, you're also helping them to establish credit.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Yeah, so that was one of our competitive advantages, right? So rather than going on Zillow, finding a place, kind of traditional route, you could come to us and get a lot of services for essentially free because you're not paying extra rent from being with us because the landlord is just advertising the same rent they're paying us. But through the transaction, we report to the credit bureau. For that, to get started, we had to, we partnered with 2 companies. One of them is called Boom. I'm not sure if they're still around. And the other one is Nova Credit. So they were really an example for us in setting that up. And I think what they do is they do cross-border credit, meaning that they can translate your credit history from a different country into a U.S. equivalent. I really like that concept, but I always thought there was a limit behind it because your home country has to have a credit system already. I'm from Haiti and there's no such thing.
Yeah.
So I could never be a customer, right? So that's sort of the limiting factor I saw there, but they have amazing technology and helped us sort of launch that credit reporting aspect.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you associated your company with Hugs with Nova Credit.
Yeah.
And then Nova Credit monitors the payments from your renters to the landlord through your system and then reports it to the credit bureaus.
Yep.
And so that credit history shows up on there so that when they go to buy a house, now they've got the secured credit card that they got in college that they're continuing to use. And remember, you have to use the credit to get credit for it. So even if you're charging $10, $15 a month and paying it off every single month, that's what you want to do. You're exercising it. Now you've got rent as your second line of credit. Beautiful, right? But lenders require 3 lines of credit. So what's the third line that you recommend?
Either another card, ideally from the same bank, because now you've had established history, not just with the credit bureau, but with the bank, right? Because they see your checking account, they see your savings account. Or if you can't afford a card, because that establishes credit diversity, I think it's called. So you have 3 lines of credit that are different. So that also factors into your score. I think I had just another card with the same bank, and that worked out for me. But people, you can do anything really.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because that then takes us to probably the next chapter in your life, which is now you have this company going, but you also established a way of getting your own credit in the United States over a very short period of time. And ultimately you wind up in the real estate market in a big way. I want to hear how you got started and where you are today. Are you a tech investor looking to shape the future of real estate? HomePie is the #1 for sale by owner marketplace, and we are revolutionizing the way homes are bought and sold. I'd love to hear from you. Just email invest@homepie.com and let's chat. Now back to the show. I want to hear how you got started and where you are today.
Yeah. So all of it kind of, I like to say I was thrown into real estate because I didn't come here with it like as a goal. It's always, super nice, but always felt like 30 years down the line for me when I got here. So because I was running Hugs, or I had started that, to get listings on the platform, I had to understand how to sell to a landlord or how to sell to a property manager to incentivize them to do that. So I had to learn a lot about how real estate works, specifically residential real estate, right? So through that, I had a lot of conversations with owners, developers, investors. Went to a lot of meetups, a lot of YouTube. Frankly, really got me there. A lot of podcasts, similar to this one, and through learning how to sell to a landlord, I thought, well, I kind of want to do this, right? I'm like, real estate's interesting. Real estate's good, good long-term wealth. I just kept hearing the same lessons again and again and again, and then started there. But the real break was one of my customers was a developer, or is a developer in San Diego, and was building around pockets where students live, right? So near USD primarily, but some work near SDSU, UCSD, etc. And because I had like a really, really good demand in terms of getting students into the door, I always had way more demand than I could handle, still till this day, for that company. I made them a lot of money, right? And then we just, from interacting a lot, as CEOs of each business, a friendship grew. And we thought, well, I mean, we're good working together. let's just start something, right? And this is where my current company, Parkside Asset Management, came up. So we call it PAM for short. So we basically buy, build, and manage residential real estate all over San Diego. Our sweet spot is around 5,000 square foot lot, single family home. We tear it down and build 14 to 20 units on top.
Wait. You're taking a 5,000 square foot lot and building 14 to 20 units on it. What's the zoning for that?
So San Diego's been very progressive in allowing density into the city because there's always a housing crisis every year, right? So the zoning, typically here in California, you have ADUs that you can build by right. There are zones like RM37 that can allow for multifamily also, and there's some RS zones also. But mostly it's the bonuses that you want to take a look at. There's some development bonuses. There's some affordable housing bonuses that you can sort of package together to increase your allowable units. That doesn't mean that you have to build that many, right? So we build 14 to 20 units on lots that are zoned for like 50 or 60, especially somewhere like Hillcrest.
Wow.
Where FAR, which is, floor area, I remember for the square footage that you can build per the lot size, it's really high. So they'll multiply the lot size by a certain number to allow you that square footage to build on. So sometimes it ends up being like 60 units, and you're like, this is not fitting here. Because there's height requirements too, right? So you have to design the buildings to fit the demographic that you're hoping will be applying to these places.
How many of these lots have you purchased, torn down, and built units on?
Yeah, so right now we have 3 built and 3 under construction. This is that we own and keep, but we've done some third-party development also.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to break this down and go back to kind of your start of this.
Yeah.
You met somebody. He was a developer. You hit things off. You said, "Let's do some stuff together."
Yeah.
Okay. You go from that agreement where you're going to do something together, and how do you get into that very first property?
Yeah, so cheat code, the very first property can be yours, right? So what ended up happening is we had a third-party property manager, like anybody else, right? And we said, well, the easiest way for us to start is to manage this ourselves, because that 5% of the rent, 5, 6, whatever percent that you're getting charged, can be your seed money to try this out, right? So I think at the time we were paying out about $60,000 in management fees. And we said, well, that's a salary, pretty much. So let's just invest that into starting a business that can manage, what we do, what we own, plus, bring on some business. And then, it grew from connections after that.
But when you say you were paying $60,000 a month for management fees, on what properties? Did you own this?
Not just my own. So Michael, who's my partner, also owns a lot more real estate.
Okay.
Right?
On his
so
own property that he owned.
Exactly.
He
so
was
we bring
paying
the entire portfolio.
Got it. So your
into
business together started with basically property management business.
Exactly.
And where you said, look, let's partner up on this and run a property management firm. We'll manage all of your properties.
Yeah.
Because Carl doesn't own anything yet.
No, not at that time, no.
Right?
Yeah.
Begin to build that, build some revenue, and then you said cheat code. The first property should be owner occupied.
Yeah.
What did you do? What did you buy?
So in that same pocket, similar type of property. So 2-bed, 2-bath home on a 5,000 square foot lot where there's space to build. Typically, someone would go maybe with an ADU in the back or something. But I've just had the example of my partner Michael just going bigger and said, let's just continue doing that, right? But that's like all in the USD area. He's also a USD alum. I'm speaking at USD like 3 times a year, so it's still that same sort of pocket and those same connections I created since like 2019 that are still paying off today.
So you said, okay, I'm ready to buy my first property, and let's make this an investment.
Yeah.
So you buy this 2+2, single family, owner occupied.
Yeah.
What kind of loan did you get?
So for that, I aligned with Michael, so we
So he
partnered
paid
on
for
that.
it.
Yeah, on that purchase.
He invested in it.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
didn't get a traditional loan.
No.
You just partnered on it.
Yeah. So there's levels to this, right?
Yes.
As an immigrant, not only do you have to establish credit, but there's types of credit that you will just never be eligible for, right? Because some of the loan requirements are that you need to be a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is true. But there are loans for foreign nationals.
Yes, of course.
They're different, larger down payment requirements and qualifications
Yep.
Available, but obviously a lot easier if you've got private investor,
Yep.
which you did.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that was number one.
Yeah,
So you didn't
so-
actually move in that property.
No, so put a tenant in there, float the actual hold period for permits, et cetera, and then we break ground in November. But all of that is aligning myself with the right person and having the right pitch, and them seeing that you're actually for real doing this, which kind of gave me a leg up, right? Because we can use his background as a general contractor to qualify for the actual construction loans.
Yeah.
Right. And, personal financial statements, all the stuff you already know, to be able to tell the bank, hey, this is a feasible thing. I didn't have the experience that he has.
Yeah.
Right. I'm building up to it. So I'm like, okay, invest with me, maybe take the lion's share of what's going to come out of it. But that allows me to have the resume to then on the next one go by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, man. So, I mean, this is incredible story. You come here, 2019, just before COVID.
Yep.
You're going to school. It was for your girlfriend, who then you broke up with. You're going to school.
Yeah.
And you just put yourself out there, like in a lot of different ways. So you develop this company that feeds into housing.
Yeah.
And I said this for a long time. I said this when I was going through college trying to figure out what to do. I started to realize that no matter where you earn your money, when you're wealthy, the money ends up in real estate.
Yeah.
And so for me, I wanted to cut out the middleman. I'm like, oh shit, I'll just get involved in real estate.
Yeah.
And just that's where I'll make my money and I already know about it.
Yeah.
And so it was a no-brainer for me. But there's a lesson. You did the same thing.
Yeah.
You got involved somewhat in real estate. This is through setting up this international company that helps students get housing. That introduced you to a landlord.
Yeah.
That became part of the program that you hit it off with, that then led to partnering with, that then led to acquiring property.
Yeah,
I love
exactly. And hopefully it's just the beginning.
Yeah, it is just a beginning. There's no question about that. So let's talk a little bit about that MBA, right?
Yeah.
So you did your undergraduate. You're the first one in your family to get your MBA.
Yep.
And remind me again, what's it in?
So general business management.
Business management.
Yep.
How important was it for you to have your MBA, and do you actually feel like that's benefited you since you've gotten it?
So
I'd say if you're considering joining the AmeriFund team, it's a really good idea.
We as processors at AmeriFund Home Loans support the loan officers in every aspect of the loan once it comes into processing because we want them out there marketing themselves and originating more loans and supporting more borrowers.
Competitive commission plans are a given, and powerful technology is expected, but what truly sets us apart is our culture. We've built a solid support system for our loan officers. If you're interested in joining the AmeriFund team, go to amerifund.com/careers.
I don't think that, in theory, what I've learned in the program has helped me much in the outside world. Now, I will put the caveat that, like my background or my family's background is purely in business. Like my parents were business owners, my entire life growing up. So that's what I'm naturally drawn to do. I was smart enough to do well on tests and understand concepts and all of that. But I wouldn't say that I've actually used much of the actual MBA, right? It has good, at least so far, marketing value, right out of school, because it just establishes that maybe you're trying harder than someone else. But in terms of actual technical ability, I can't really attribute much to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's controversial, right? And there's probably more outspoken people today that school is not as beneficial as perhaps it could be.
Yeah.
and that it's a bit of a money grab, and that you're better off learning what you want to do as a vocation directly and not taking that time at school. Obviously, there's some social benefit. You got some benefit from building a brand. So you did some things that probably you didn't need your MBA for, but going to college gave you some leverage.
Right? And the platform to do it.
But I think that's a really interesting thing. A lot of people get a degree in something they never even do.
No. And so for an MBA specifically, I will say that it can serve as a good pivot in a career, right? So if you were a pharmacist and you want to start a pharmacy, getting an MBA might help, right? So because you don't understand business concepts at all, right? So it's kind of like a upgraded undergrad, really, is what I would say. But to your point with the money grab, now I see, after I've graduated, kids just getting into an MBA with no experience right out of undergrad, which makes absolutely no sense. Not just from the age, but like, what do you have to bring to the program? You have no experience. You have nothing to talk about. You're just going to rehash the same things you learned, and it costs you the same. Like, to me, that makes no sense. And it's like, we'll waive your GMAT requirement if you sign up during your last semester of undergrad. To me, that's just upselling. Right? So it's like, now that dilutes the brand or the value of what an actual MBA is supposed to be.
Compare an MBA to a mentorship. What would you pick?
Mentorship, 200%, all the way, throw the MBA out. If you're comparing them, no way, no contest. Because the thing with the mentorship is that you learn all the stuff you don't know that you need to learn, right? An MBA has a curriculum. It's pretty set. It's like whatever, you go through the classes. It's great, right? But the mentorship, it's like the stuff that you don't see, the stuff that, like, a mentorship what might just be like, us two having drinks, and we have one conversation that kind of like sparks everything in my mind, right? Just seeing you act and how you do things on a day-to-day basis, that has value, right? But, like all the stuff that you don't even know that you're teaching me, those are the real lessons.
That's right.
And you get thrown into the fire. Like, I take Michael as a friend, but really as a mentor, because he's like 10 years ahead of me, and he sometimes just throws me into the fire.
That's right.
Figure it out.
That's right.
So now I have to, because there's actual money on the line, right?
But you have him to guide you, and so this is what we talk about when we talk about the blueprint, right?
Exactly.
Michael had the blueprint, and he's showing you that blueprint, and he probably shaved 10 years off your learning experience and trying to figure it out yourself.
Easily.
And so it is really about that. And so you've taken now and created your own blueprint, and you will have the way to do that for the next person that wants to reach out to Carl and say, Carl, I want to do what you're doing, and figure out a way where you can bring benefit to Carl to get that benefit in return. So with that, you also are an Airbnb superhost. How did that happen? What do you need to What do you need to do, or how do you need to operate your Airbnb business to become a superhost?
Got it. So I'll tell you how I started and then get into the superhost thing. So I started in 2022. I think it was February or end of January 2022, out of necessity. So I was out of school, raised some money for hugs, etc. So I'm building, but I'm like reinvesting everything I have in the business. And I have a roommate at the time who sort of, breaks the lease and leaves. So now I have to carry the apartment. And I said, you know what? I bet I can, kill two birds with one stone here. I can, lease out my apartment to someone else, try and really just float the till the end of the lease, maybe make some money. But really I wanted to learn Airbnb's business model because I was building something similar. But I had never done it at the time. So I just, again, a lot of YouTube, put up my first listing and then start taking guests, right? Signing up is relatively easy, but really trying to, and this is something I always say, try to monetize on day one, right? So identify who you're going to be selling to, because setting up the place and going to TJ Maxx and buying, anybody can do that, but really you have to in Airbnb, it's a lot of design, but you have to design it for a target demographic. So I lived downtown at the time. I was relatively close to the convention center, close to to the Petco Park where the Padres play. So I knew that I would get some form of transient person who's going to one of these things that's happening in the city. So I had not a very cute pink tailored vacation thing. I had the practical listing, right? So this is probably 30% above the regular rent, which is still undercutting actual short-term businesses that need to make a lot of money, right? So I was like, I had the practical listing, the practical choice. You can, sleep 6 people, 2-bed, 2-bath, living room, and, good to go. So that's how I started. That was my first actual listing. Now, to become a superhost, in technicality, Airbnb has 3 main criteria. High rating, I believe it's 4.8 or over. A certain number of nights or stays. I think it's 100 nights booked or a certain number of stays, and a very low cancellation rate. So I think it's 1% is a threshold. So very, very thin margins there. But the good thing is that they evaluate your account every 3 months. So every quarter they go in and say, how did you perform last quarter? And you'll be superhost for that quarter. But you can also lose superhost status the following quarter if you don't uphold. So this isn't just like a become superhost and you're good. No, you have to stay superhost to be able to get those benefits.
And that when you are a superhost, it's more attractive to people that are coming on the platform, right? So it kind of feeds itself.
Yeah, exactly. But, and you get higher quality guests, typically the people who choose your place. So you get just more demand, really. And then you're kind of within a sphere where Airbnb can take a look at your account. From time to time, I get calls from them offering, maybe if they're kicking off a new program, then I could beta test it, et cetera, et cetera. So those are actually very interesting. There's 2 that I'm taking part in.
So are you are these properties that you are doing for Airbnb? Are these properties that you own with your partner? Are they your partner's properties? Are they other people's?
Yeah. So there's a mix. Some of them, mostly midterm rentals, we run within our own properties. Again, since we self-manage, the way I started though was with Arbitrage. So I found places that were friendly to that or to subleasing, and then had that. I would just pay the rent, collect some money, and then that was the end of it.
Wait, so you're renting units that you're also renting out for Airbnb?
So that's how I started.
Okay.
I don't have any of that on my portfolio.
I want to understand
anymore.
how that works.
Yeah.
So you go get a lease, a long-term rental lease from some other owner.
Yeah.
And then in your lease agreement, you need to make sure that you're able to sublease it.
Yeah.
And that there's no restriction on that.
Yeah.
And you went and basically never live in this property, but then release it out as a short-term rental.
Yeah.
That is an interesting concept I haven't heard before.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's called Airbnb arbitrage.
Okay.
So just the term arbitrage is you're paying a certain rent and you're betting that you're going to make more money than that. The key is to get it cheap enough for your risk profile to be low enough for that to make sense, because Airbnb is seasonal mostly. My listings were not seasonal because practicality is practicality, right? So if I'm not renting to you, I'm renting to someone else, right? There's always a reason, especially in a good market like San Diego. So one of my best arbitrage deals, it was a loft downtown San Diego. I approached this building that was half vacant. It was a mixed-use building, and this is before all the STR short-term rental regulations came down in San Diego. So we can get into that. So I approached the management and the owners, and I said, "Hey, some of these units have bathrooms in them. Can I take a look at them and see if we can work something out?" And mind you, I had like a small office there, like 500 square foot office in that building. And I found a space that was 1,500 square feet overlooking a park that they're building, corner unit, really large windows. And they were renting that for like $2,600 a month. So I said, well, I'll take it. And that included utilities. I just had to add Wi-Fi to it. So my all-in cost was $2,700 at the time. And then during the summer, the unit would make like $9,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some nice arbitrage.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you would sign
good.
a 1-year lease, and
so,
then
So I signed a 2-year lease on that one,
Okay.
which helped keep the rent down. And because my whole thing was I didn't want any surprises.
Right.
So I signed a 2-year lease then. And there were some rumors that the short-term rental stuff was going to happen like in about 2 years. So I said, if I need to get out, I'll get out at that point.
Yeah.
So I signed a 2-year lease, and then that kept me floating and sort of paid for the company because I no longer had a job. So like that helped me carry through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And yes, in San Diego, in a lot of municipalities, there are now regulations on short-term rentals. And as I understand it, in San Diego, the permit applies to the individual and the property. So it is, you get one permit as a person for one particular property, and that's it. Like one person can have multiple properties, and there's only, I think, around 600 of these left in the city, maybe less now. But that obviously makes it really difficult to do an arbitrage process. Because you've got to be the owner of that property in order to get that permit, right?
You don't have to be the owner. You can be the owner or have legal right of possession of the asset. So you can be a renter, but they need to see in the lease that you're allowed to do this.
Okay.
Yeah. So either works.
You can still do it with one property.
Yep. Exactly. Just one property.
So, and with existing Airbnb owners, as long as they got permits on, they can have the multiple properties, but all the new permits are one and one, right?
Yeah. So what the permit allows you to do is to rent out the place for less than 30 days.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Short term.
Yeah. So if you're doing minimum of 30 days or more, you can do anything, right? And there are, I think, 4 tiers that you can file for. One of them is, permits you to do it half the year, 6 months out of the year. Another one, you have to live at the property. And then tier 3, which is the most popular, which is the one that has 600 left, you don't have to be at the property. You can run it as a business, essentially. And then tier 4 is the same thing, but in the Mission Bay, Mission Beach area, which they're really, really strict on that.
Got it.
But a lot of people try to go around the system. It's really tough.
Yeah, we're trying to bring in, straw owners.
Exactly.
Right, which is having somebody else sign even though they're not involved with it, and you just compensate them a little bit.
Yeah, it's
very
a whole
interesting.
Thing. Yeah.
All right, so you've done a lot, man, and now you've started a podcast too. Yeah. The Great Setbacks.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So the Great Setbacks, and thanks for bringing it up. On my podcast, I try to highlight the parts of the stories that don't typically make it to the screen. So I'll have a guest on. My first guest, my friend Mark, he's an exited entrepreneur from the solar business, really successful, all of that. That's what people know about him. But I was more interested in what the darker days looked like, right? Because that's where I find value. That's what kept me going. Listening to other people who are willing to share their own stories. It changed my perspective because I went from feeling like an idiot, like I had made all the wrong decisions in life. Like, why was I going through this? Why was I flat broke? Why was my account in negative every day? Why was I living in a halfway house? Like all that stuff. To, people who are ahead of me, who have what I want, who are who I want to be, also went through similar things. But I could have never learned that if I didn't hear it from someone. And I don't think there's enough platforms out there to do that. Yeah. So I'm just trying to start my own and having fun with it.
Yeah, that's good. I love the subject for it.
Thank you.
Everybody, doesn't matter how successful they are, they've gone through setbacks. Yeah. Whether they're short term or long term. In the mortgage business, some of those are completely unrelated to your business. Yeah. And they're just the entire industry. They're completely out of your control. Yeah. 2007, 2008 meltdown was one of those. Yeah. And I had to live through that, and many of my colleagues too. Oh. And so you have in every business, every successful entrepreneur has gone through these. Yeah. And I love the fact that you're trying to get out of them what those were so that other people can feel comfort in the idea that even though they're experiencing it, it's not unusual and they can get through it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And some setbacks are professional, but some setbacks are also personal.
Sure.
You know, like a breakup, a divorce, you know, anything like that.
Something medical.
Yeah, something medical. Exactly. Those things set you back quite a bit, but the way you come back is you know, is how you establish your own blueprint.
That's right.
So, you know, nobody's been Brad Rice before Brad Rice was, right? Yeah. So you have your own blueprint if you've come back from your own things, right?
Yeah.
So those are the stories I have fun talking about, although it can be a little hard to have people open up because those things are hard to remember.
Yeah.
But I think that in the end, they benefit, we benefit, and the audience does too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's going to be very good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, Carl, man, thanks for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun. Learned a lot. Thanks for sharing your blueprint.
Yeah,
and if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
So Carl DeMelle everywhere. I'll spell it out so people don't mess it up. So Carl, C-A-R-L, DeMelle, D-U-M-E-S-L-E. Have a French last name from being from Haiti. But that's my socials everywhere, Instagram, YouTube, and then the Great Setbacks podcast.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you spelled it out for everybody because I definitely didn't get it right. Again, thanks for joining, buddy.
My pleasure.
And we'll see more of each other.
Yes, sir.